Good morning, everybody. Hope you're having a good day. My name is Zach Passmore, and I am an enforcement attorney here at the South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs. Thank you for joining us today while I talk about buy now, pay later plans. That's going to be the focus of this presentation. I might touch on a couple of other payment options, but the focus today is going to be the new kind of buy now, pay later plans that are available. Before I get into the meat of the presentation, standard legal disclosure that this is being provided for educational purposes and is not intended to be legal advice of any kind. I won't be touching really on any legal issues today, but should you have any kind of specific legal questions regarding buy now, pay later issues that you may have, I would recommend speaking to a private attorney. So like I said, today we're going to talk about the basics of buy now, pay later loans, how they work, who uses them and how they are used. I will highlight some of the advantages of buy now, pay later loans, and I'll also address some of the concerns that could arise with the continued use of them. And I'll have a few takeaways, some guidance on what the department would recommend when it comes to just general good money habits. So now that's done, we can talk about why we're here today, and that is what is buy now, pay later? Buy now, pay later, I think a lot of people are starting to see, especially online when they're making purchases online, the option to buy now, pay later. What that is, it is a type of loan that allows buyers to make a purchase and receive their item or service immediately, but they pay for that item or service at a later time. Like I said, you commonly see this on offer at a store, at the retailers at the point of sale, or on the website. If you're buying something online, it usually the option pops up right before the checkout. The loan is offered and underwritten by a third-party company that pays the merchant upfront for the item or services. And these payment plans are usually short-term. I'll go kind of into the most common model that there is, but they're typically short-term, and they may or may not include interest. Many of them do include fees for late or rescheduled payments. I will touch a little bit on the history of buy now, pay later. It's not, as a concept, it's not a new idea. Postponed payment arrangements have been common practice since the 1840s. Probably the most common type that most people are familiar with from a retail sense are things like layaway and store credit. But in the 1980s and the 1990s is when department stores really took off with issuing private label credit cards, a credit card that you could use only at their department store. In the early 2000s, the buy now, pay here model started becoming popular in places like Scandinavia and Australia. And while there were a couple of entries into the US market prior to this, 2015 is kind of when multiple companies started entering the US market and offering their buy now, pay later plans. But in 2020 is when these services really took off, skyrocketed during COVID-19 pandemic. People had some extra money thanks to the stimulus payments, things of that nature, and people really started taking advantage in 2020 of the buy now, pay later model. Kind of the current state of the buy now, pay later market, current as of at least a couple years. In 2021, there were 180 million loans originated by buy now, pay later lenders in the US, and that is a tenfold increase from 2019 when there were 16.8 million loans originated. So it, like I said, it really took off in 2020, and it continues to grow currently. The total loan amount among these 180 million loans was 24.4 billion, which again is a massive increase from the 2 billion that was lended in 2019. 73% of all applications were approved in 2021, so almost a quarter, or 3/4, sorry, almost 3/4 of people that applied for buy now, pay later options got approved for it. And it's typically used for smaller purchases. The average loan amount for these kind of loans is about $135. So who uses buy now, pay later? Well, it's typically younger people we are seeing as far as the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau put out a survey a couple of years ago to kind of gather these data points. But what they saw in their responses from consumers is that it's generally people under 33 that use them. That makes up a little over half of the entire population that uses buy now, pay here lenders, or sorry, buy now, pay later. But you'll see that it's the 25 to 33-year-old bracket has a significant portion of that percentage. The 18 to 24 age bracket actually does not use it quite as much as you might expect. The 40 years and up share makes up a little less than half of all users, but it is important to note that that share has increased incrementally since 2019. The typical user has access to other forms of credit. They have at least one other credit card they can use. It's not typically someone who has no credit. The general user at least does have some other form of credit available to them, although their credit history may not be the best. Their average credit card APR is probably somewhere around 22 to 25%. I was looking at some of the data earlier, and their average credit score is somewhere in the mid 600s. So, you know, not the best credit history, but it's certainly not the worst. And the average user typically has or has had at least one past due account in their credit history. It could also be someone who, for whatever reason, just does not want to use traditional credit. Perhaps they have some concerns about credit reporting, or you know, they don't want to be charged any kind of interest. But for whatever reason, it just may be someone who does not want to use a typical credit arrangement. So how does buy now, pay later work? There's kind of two models, but one is more prevalent, and there is a second one that the industry is kind of shifting towards, which I'll describe later. But I think the way that most people are familiar with buy now, pay later at the moment is that the customer is offered this option at checkout when they're purchasing their items. If they're interested, they fill out a short application, which includes certain personal information and would require a payment method, such as a debit or a credit card number. They may require something like a bank account linking, so you'd have to give your bank account information, things of that nature. It's not uniform among all the lenders. But once someone fills out this application, the lender will then make a near instant decision to approve or deny that application. And there's kind of two ways that they may choose to do that. They may run a soft credit check on an applicant, get some kind of bare bones information on their credit history, maybe like a credit score, something like that. But oftentimes a provider may not run a credit check at all. They may instead just look towards their own company's history with that applicant. If this is a repeat user of their services, they may go back and see, you know, how they have paid their bills back in the past with regards to past buy now, pay later loans. And if this is kind of the method that the company takes, they typically start out with lending smaller amounts of money. But either way that it's done, if it's approved, the customer would then make their first payment immediately at the point of sale, and then would receive their item or the service and they agree to make the additional payments to satisfy the loan amount. So that's generally how buy now, pay later works. The most common one that people see is what's called the pay in 4 model. So basically what this is that the purchase price or the loan amount is divided into 4 equal installments. And of course, the consumer pays the first installment immediately at checkout, with remaining 3 installments due 2 weeks apart. And for this model, most of the time, the selling point is that there is 0% interest on these plans. Like I said, the model is kind of shifting these days with different profit vectors and things of that nature. These companies are moving towards an app-based model for the most part. Basically, what this entails is that the buy now, pay here lender kind of becomes the starting point for the entire transaction. So consumers preemptively would complete a credit application process on the buy now, pay later lender's app. Once this application is approved, consumers would then receive access to a virtual shopping mall on the app, which would show various retailers that the lender contracts with, various merchants that may be offering their items, and there's a credit amount provided by the lender. So you're kind of in this virtual shopping mall with an idea of how much money the lender is willing to offer you for a purchase. And if there's also a method where, rather than dealing with merchants that the lender has contracted with, a certain list of lenders, what the buy now, pay later lender would instead choose to do is to issue a single-use bank-issued virtual card that the consumer can use where they choose. So that's kind of the new model that is starting to gain popularity with the buy now, pay here lenders. But here is a snapshot kind of at least of September 2022 of the types of purchases that are being made with buy now, pay later loans. As you can see, apparel and clothing make up the vast majority of the types of purchases that people are using these types of loans for. The second category is personal effects. Those things include things like electronics, fitness and sporting equipment, video games, hobbies, jewelry, that sort of stuff. Mass market means purchases at retailers and department stores. If you look at the bottom, you'll see everyday as a category. It's not a large proportion of the types of the share of the market, but it is increasing. That is something to be aware of. Everyday includes things like necessity purchases, so groceries, utilities, gas for your car, things of that nature. The market is seeing an increase on those kind of purchases, although as of 2022, it's still a small portion of the overall market. So there are benefits of buy now, pay later, and of course the department is not endorsing any particular model of credit or payment, but obviously to be aware of the benefits of buy now, pay later is that the convenience factor. It's very easy to apply. It's offered pretty much uniformly at every major retailer, online and in store a lot of the times, and the application process is very simple. They don't ask for a whole lot of information from you. So the application process is pretty easy and is a convenient type of payment. There is a high application approval rate. As I said, about 3/4 of all applications get approved. There's often a minimal credit check or no credit check at all, so that is something that could be attractive to some prospective buyers. And there are interest rate savings by utilizing buy now, pay later. Like I said, the average APR for the typical user is about 25% on credit cards. Someone who has a credit card and the interest rate at that percentage may wish to avoid those fees and save some money by using buy now, pay later. Although it does bear noting that not every buy now, pay later plan is 0% interest. So like I said, that is kind of the popular model. Buy now, pay later also offers fixed short-term payments. You know what you're going to be paying, and generally you're going to get it paid off pretty quickly as long as you're following the agreement. There are, I won't call them disadvantages, but there are some items of concern, or I guess maybe things to be aware of when you're considering buy now, pay later loans. And the next slides will kind of go through a few of those. So kind of what could be considered a benefit of buy now, pay later could also be considered a little bit of a concern for them, in that there is a limited review of the applicant's ability to pay when it comes to approving these kind of loans. As I've said, lenders typically perform either no credit check or a soft inquiry that's not going to provide a whole lot of information regarding either if an applicant has other types of buy now, pay later loans that they are responsible for, or if they have any other kind of debt obligations that they must pay. Also, buy now, pay later lenders typically do not report positive credit history. So, you know, there may not be much visibility when a lender is evaluating an applicant's credit history. And because they typically do not report positive credit history, these types of loans will not build someone's credit history. And kind of linked to the limited review of an applicant's ability to pay, there could be issues with overextension on the part of the borrower. This is typically seen in two different types of ways. The first one being loan stacking. This is when a borrower takes out multiple buy now, pay later loans from different lenders and is unable to repay some or all of them. Because lenders use soft credit inquiries when they're evaluating applicants, they may not have any visibility of a borrower's other loan obligations. So, you know, a person takes out multiple buy now, pay later loans, and they're due typically every 2 weeks. If someone is not staying on top of their obligations, they may overextend themselves when it comes to payment of their bills. This is typically an issue that can be identified quickly, of course, because, you know, the payments come due fairly fast. Another example of overextension could be what's called sustained usage of buy now, pay later. This is kind of what you see with repeat users of these types of loans. In this scenario, a borrower is duly paying their buy now, pay later loans, but while they're staying on top of those loans, it's not leaving a whole lot of money left over for other loan obligations they may have, such as rent, mortgage, utilities, student loans, things of that nature. When I was looking into this issue, I noticed, or I discovered that there was a survey back in 2017 that surprisingly kind of found that borrowers more often than not are more likely to prioritize paying personal loans, such as buy now, pay later loans, smaller amounts, things of that nature. Borrowers are more likely to pay these off on time, more so than they are larger debt obligations such as rent or mortgage or credit card payments. One theory suggests that this may be because a borrower may think it is better for them to fully pay off one of these smaller loans rather than making a partial payment on one of these other bigger loans. And that's not necessarily the case, but that's that's a possible mindset that some consumers may have. Now, sustained usage is an issue that may take some time to see the trend as far as overextensions, not like loan stacking where it can be identified pretty quickly. It's usually something that you see once once basically the money starts drying up. Another concern with regard to buy now, pay later loans is that most, if not all, of these lenders require that a borrower enrolls in auto pay, either with a credit or debit card or a linked bank account, what's known as an ACH payment. They require that to make the first payment. They do this to increase the stickiness of the obligation because they're much more likely to be paid if you are enrolled in auto payment. A lot of these lenders make it difficult to remove auto pay. Later on, some require auto pay through the life of the loan. And this is important to note because that's not allowed for more conventional types of credit, like credit card lenders. By federal law, they're not allowed to require auto pay, but because buy now, pay later is kind of in an area that's not, it's an area where the law really hasn't caught up yet to the model. It's kind of a gray area as to whether or not they would fall under those types of laws. Some other concerns regarding buy now, pay later is that there are oftentimes additional fees that the consumer may encounter. Typically, late fees. Not every lender does charge a late fee, but a lot of them do. And the average late fee is about $7. Another point to point out regarding the difference between buy now, pay later arrangements and credit card issuers and more traditional forms of credit is that, again, federal law prohibits credit card suppliers from assessing multiple late fees on a single missed payment. That's not necessarily, as of today, the case with buy now, pay here lenders. So that's something to bear in mind. Another type of fee that the CFPB identifies that could be an issue are overdraft fees. So due to the auto pay requirements and loan stacking issues that I kind of touched on earlier, if the consumer is kind of falling into these issues, there is a risk of overdraft fees or insufficient fund fees being charged by the borrower's bank. Now, all major lenders have told the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that they will attempt to process a payment multiple times. That's known as representment. When I was reading this, one of the lenders has even said that they will attempt to process a payment up to 8 times. So if they're trying to process that payment multiple times on an account that has insufficient funds, that's going to be multiple overdraft fees assessed to the borrower. Another issue, or I guess not issue, but cause of concern possibly, or things to be aware of, which I guess you can call an issue, is the dispute resolution for buy now, pay later. So this is another area where the law differs from the model. So federal law requires, again, credit card companies to have dispute resolution processes put in place. I think most people know that as the chargeback process with credit card companies. But again, buy now, pay later lenders do not necessarily fall under those requirements. So currently, these lenders typically require that borrowers first contact the retailer before attempting any dispute resolution. Surveys with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau have shown that dispute resolution is the top ranking buy now, pay later related complaint category that they receive. Usually when a buyer is trying to like return an item or something like that, that's when they can fall into some issues regarding dispute resolution. So like I said, the lenders typically require that the borrower and the merchant try and sort out the issue first. But borrowers may also be required to continue making payments even when the resolution is pending. So it's possible that they may have already returned the item, but they're still having to make payments on it. There are a couple other additional things to be aware of when it comes to buy now, pay later loans. One of them being that most of the time, the lenders allow payment by credit card, which itself could be an issue, obviously, because if someone is in a position where they have no choice but to use their credit card to make that payment, they're going to be hit by the interest on using that card. And it really kind of defeats the purpose of using the buy now, pay later option in the first place. But of course, sometimes people don't have a choice. Another issue is possible data harvesting concerns. A lot of these lenders will sell a consumer's purchase habits data to third parties. So this may, this may increase like some targeted advertising and things of that nature that consumers just are generally, not a fan of. But using buy now, pay later might kind of add to that issue. And kind of as I mentioned, since they don't really fall neatly under federal law at the moment, there are non-standard credit disclosures among buy now, pay later lenders. For instance, they're not required at the moment to have the disclosures that the Federal Truth in Lending Act requires certain credit providers to issue. So that is kind of a to be determined area right there to keep an eye on. So what are some takeaways with regarding buy now, pay later? Well, like I said, it is a fast and convenient way to spread out payments on a purchase over a short period of time. However, like with most forms of credit, it is best when used in moderation, as there can be some significant risk with continued use or multiple concurrent loans. Like with any form of credit, it's best to be able to pay off the debt before any interest or fees accrue or are due. And it's always best to kind of stay on top of your payments. Oh, excuse me. So yeah, shopping with your heart instead of your head can cause you to lose sight of some of the long-term consequences of overspending. People tend to spend more when they're paying with credit than they would when paying with cash. One of the surveys that the CFPB had, many of the consumers did say that they used buy now, pay later because they could not afford the item at the time. And while I did bring up some concerns in the buy now, pay later field, many of the lenders are voluntarily attempting to address several of these concerns by setting procedures in place. But as I've kind of said, the laws still need to catch up to the business model. So what can you do before you choose to do business with a buy now, pay later lender? Well, we'll plug our department's website here where you can search our complaints database to see if the company has any complaints and how they respond to them. You can do that by going to our website here on the first, on the home page, and you can click on search for complaints and put in their information, and you'll see some general information on the complaints that we may have against the business. If they are charging an interest rate over 18%, they do have to file what's called a maximum rate schedule with our department. So if that is the case, you can use our licensing lookup and go to the maximum interest rate section and choose probably supervised lenders or maybe other businesses and see if they do have a maximum interest rate on file, and you would be able to see the maximum interest that you may be charged with regarding to one of these loans. But in general, it's best to be money smart. Keep an eye on your spending, track it, keep a careful record on what you spend for a month. And once you do this, you may see that you're spending money in ways that you would not expect. And once you've done that, set some goals, and both for the short term and the long term, so you can set yourself up in the best financial position that you have available. And keep these habits up, and that way you'll be able to stay on top of your finances. With that, I hope you have a good rest of your day and a good rest of your week, and happy holidays. And yeah, have a good one.